Good evening, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us. We'll get started in just a moment. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Harris County Flood Control District's virtual community engagement meeting to discuss Barker Reservoir Watershed Channel De-Silt and Repair Program. This virtual community meeting is being offered by the Flood Control District to share vital information with the community. My name is Emily Waddell with the Flood Control District Communications team. I'm joined tonight by a team of Flood Control District leadership and subject matter experts to ensure we continue to keep you up to date on important flood mitigation projects in your community. We're also joined by staff from area elected officials' offices and community associations. We're so glad to see the community engaged in these projects, and we look forward to continuing to share updates and keeping you in the community involved. First, we'd like to begin tonight's meeting with some remarks from Harris County Precinct 3 Commissioner Tom Ramsay.
Howdy, y'all. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to the Harris County Flood Control District for hosting this event. We recently dodged a bullet with Hurricane Nicholas, and Ida was nice enough to spare us as well. We're not in the clear just yet of hurricane season, which ends November 30th. So it's important we remain vigilant and prepared. From the precinct and county perspective, our teams are working hard to improve drainage in our region. Tonight, we're here to talk about the desilting and repairs within the Reservoir Watershed, a project generated from the 2018 bond. I'm excited to say, in case you haven't heard, all 2018 bond projects are a go, and even better, they're ahead of schedule. We still have work to do, but you should know that we are in a better position than we were back during Harvey. We are working with all agencies, local and federal, to find the relief that we need. That includes discussions with the Army Corps of Engineers about large underground tunnels that can significantly improve drainage within our region. We're still in the early stages of discussions, but we are always looking for creative solutions so that we can find peace of mind during a rain event. Just a few weeks ago, FEMA awarded us $250 million to remove sediment in various channels, creeks, and bayous. The Addicks and Barker Reservoir watersheds are both included within that project. So we have a lot of exciting things happening and a lot of hard work going into these drainage efforts. Before I wrap up, you should know that the census results are in. By no surprise, Precinct 3 is the fastest growing and most populous of all the precincts. That means we'll have to redistrict in order to evenly distribute the population among all 4 precincts. These are federal requirements. As much as I'd love to keep the precinct boundaries in all constituents as is, change will be inevitable. I'd like your feedback on how to redistrict Precinct 3. We have a public comment meeting scheduled for Tuesday, October 5th at the Steve Raddick Community Center, beginning at 6 p.m. You can speak in person or provide remarks virtually. For more information, visit www.pct3.com. Thank you again for your time. I'm sure you'll find this presentation informative, and I hope you take advantage of the opportunity to ask questions. After all, our goal is to keep you informed and serve you as best we can. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thanks so much, Commissioner Ramsay. We appreciate you joining us tonight to kick off the meeting. This virtual public meeting will begin with a presentation to share project updates, including an overview of the Barker Reservoir Watershed Channel De-Silt and Repair Program, the project timeline, and next steps. The presentation will be followed by a virtual question and answer session with Flood Control District team members. Attendees will be able to submit comments and questions through the website or via phone. Any comments not addressed during the Q&A session will receive a response from the Flood Control District after the close of the comment period. Instructions on how to participate in the virtual meeting are included on this slide, on the virtual meeting webpage, and on the Flood Control District's website. I'll also plan to share a reminder of these instructions when we reach the Q&A portion of the meeting. I now want to transition to Marcus Duckett, Director of the Engineering Division with the Flood Control District, who will share information about the Flood Control District and this project. Marcus, over to you.
Thank you, Emily, and a special thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. In this presentation, we'll give you a brief overview of this project. But before we get into the project specifics, we want to share some information about the Flood Control District. The Harris County Flood Control District is a special purpose district, and we were created by Texas legislature in 1937. And were created in response to devastating floods that hit the Houston area in 1929 and 1935. The Flood Control District is governed by the Harris County Commissioners Court and works closely with other entities in our region, such as Harris County Engineering Department and the City of Houston. The organization was created to serve as a local partner to leverage federal funding for flood damage reduction projects. Our mission has expanded since our founding, leading to billions of dollars of federal, state, and locally funded infrastructure improvements in the ground. The mission of the Harris County Flood Control District is to provide flood damage reduction projects that work with appropriate regard for community and natural values. One of the most difficult challenges we face is constructing effective projects that are sensitive to community and natural values in a highly urbanized area. Harris County includes 22 main watersheds, totaling approximately 1,800 square miles and more than 2,500 linear miles of channel. 2,500 miles is approximately the distance from New York to California. A watershed is a geographical region of land that drains to a common channel or outlet. Each watershed has its own unique characteristics and needs. The project we're presenting tonight is in the Barker Reservoir Watershed, located in West Harris County. Our area is flood prone, and here are some reasons why. We have extreme rainfall, including tropical storms and hurricanes. We have flat, slow draining land. We also have clay soils that do not soak up excess rainfall quickly. While the Flood Control District plays a critical role in the flood risk reduction, we are one of several entities in these efforts in our region. When rain falls on your roof, it flows through several jurisdictions, such as streets and drains managed by the Harris County Engineering Department, a municipal utility district, or a city such as the City of Houston. And this happens before it flows into the larger channel, creeks, or bayous that the Flood Control District owns and maintains. This slide illustrates the various jurisdictions which sometimes we even share with other entities. Inside the neighborhoods, as shown on the left side of the illustration, storm sewers and roadside ditches collect stormwater runoff and start the process of moving it away from streets and homes. Storm sewers and roadside ditches are the responsibility of the underlying municipality. The larger bayous and channels that take the collected stormwater and move it through our drainage system to the Galveston Bay are the responsibility of the Flood Control District. This is shown on the right side of the illustration. And in the middle is a stormwater detention basin, sometimes constructed by the Flood Control District. When storm sewers are increased, this creates an increase in runoff. Since it is our policy to avoid impacts to downstream properties, detention basins help to safely take in and temporarily store excess stormwater during a heavy rain event. Often, we partner with Harris County precincts, utility districts, and others to add recreational amenities such as trails to these basins and along our channel. On August 25th, 2018, Harris County voters approved $2.5 billion for flood risk reduction projects. This followed a series of meetings across Harris County in each watershed, which resulted in a list of what is now 181 bond projects. As of August 25th, 2021, every project included in the 2018 bond program has been initiated, including 5 of the projects in the Barker Reservoir Watershed. A total of more than $1.35 billion in partnership funding has been secured so far to stretch the 2018 bond program even further. The actual timing of each individual project will depend on a variety of factors, including environmental permitting, right-of-way acquisition, and utility relocation, and in some cases, requirements of a particular grant. That said, project lists and project schedules are updated regularly on our website. So while the bond was for $2.5 billion, the full cost of every project in the bond table is almost $5 billion. So we made it clear from the outset that we would need funding partners to fully construct the projects in the bond program. And as I've mentioned, we've had some success so far, having secured more than $1.35 billion in partner funds. This graphic illustrates the many sources of those partnerships, including federal, state, and local funding that the Flood Control District is working to secure for Harris County. Each agency has its own definition of eligible projects and its own requirements for local match funding. So the Flood Control District works diligently to match projects to the right partnership opportunities. We will now move into the part of the program that is specifically about the Barker Reservoir Watershed Channel De-Silt and Repair Program. There are 47 miles of open waterways that drain into the Barker Reservoir. That makes up the Barker Reservoir Watershed. This program includes 2 phases: the desilting of channels to restore them to their original capacity, and the repair of channels where erosion and slope failures have occurred. The de-silt work effort began before Hurricane Harvey as part of a watershed maintenance program. This program consisted of channels within the Barker Reservoir Watershed for which the Flood Control District has property rights. The limits of this program did not extend west of the Grand Parkway. Channels included have been previously developed or altered from their natural state. Overall, the program included over 22 miles of channel. It's important to note that there were different construction packages for the de-silt and repair efforts. In this exhibit, you will see the overall boundaries of the Barker Reservoir Watershed. The outline of the Barker Reservoir Watershed is divided between 3 counties: Harris, Fort Bend, and Waller. We are limited by the Grand Parkway to the west. The goals and objectives of this program included desilting channels, repairing channel segments, and creating a database for future maintenance efforts. This database will help the Flood Control District effectively develop a maintenance and operations manual. So what is desilting? Desilting is the removal of sediment within a channel that has been deposited throughout multiple rain events. The sediment is removed to restore the channel to its original design capacity, which allows the channel to efficiently convey stormwater downstream to the reservoir. Deposition naturally occurs when fast-moving water slows and the sediment settles in the channel. To the right are a couple of before and after pictures of a tributary leading into Buffalo Bayou. The red arrows show where sediment had accumulated and where it was removed. This graphic shows a cross-sectional view of a typical channel. The original design for Flood Control District channels consists of a trapezoidal shape as shown in the image on top. Over the years, sediment will deposit and build up along the channels as shown by the green lines in the second image. This program removed the accumulated sediment and restored the channel to its original design capacity. This exhibit highlights the areas of the De-Silt package as originally scoped, shown here in purple. Again, the purpose of desilting is to remove accumulated sediment and restore the channel to its original design capacity. Since our previous community engagement meeting about a year ago, approximately 152,000 cubic yards of sediment was removed and completed this past August. That included 56,000 cubic yards of sediment from Mason Creek, 45,000 cubic yards from tributaries leading into Mason Creek, and 51,000 cubic yards from tributaries leading into Barker Reservoir. So as we look back, the program De-Silt effort began in spring of 2019, and by August of 2021, the package was completed. Approximately 17 miles of channels were desilted from the Barker Reservoir Watershed. A total of approximately 152,000 cubic yards of sediment was removed. So based on a 10 cubic yard per truckload, that amounted to over 15,000 dump truck loads. Now let's move on to the channel repairs portion of the program. Why are channel repairs needed? Years worth of rainfall events cause the channels to slowly erode, leading to channel deterioration. Channel repairs address damages that occur within the flood control district's right-of-way and or within the channel itself. Additionally, repairs include concrete structures and stormwater outfall failures. On the right, you can see a couple of examples where erosion and outfall damage have occurred. This repair package exhibit highlights the areas slated for repairs, shown here in purple. These channel repairs will help stabilize the channel and prevent further erosion and damage to the channel. The current status of the repair package is 60% complete, and the construction is anticipated to begin in spring of 2022. So what should you expect during construction? There will be heavy truck traffic and possibly lane closures that run adjacent to our project sites. We will have limited access and or temporary closures to trails and footpaths. Traffic control will be implemented when necessary along roadways for the safety of the working personnel and the public. Tree removal may be necessary for construction access, and the flood control district is coordinating with the appropriate agency for the relocation of trees affected by construction. So what are our next steps? This is the final community meeting for this program. All updates will continue to be provided on the Flood Control District's website. Construction of the remaining work will continue through fall or winter of 2023. The data collected will be used for future maintenance plans. While we work on the Barker Reservoir sediment removal packages, or while the work on the Barker sediment removal packages has concluded, additional money was awarded by the Federal Emergency Management Agency to the Flood Control District. These funds will allow for additional sediment removal to take place along channels in the Barker Reservoir Watershed. The timing and specifics of those locations are still being determined, and you can read more about the FEMA award on the Flood Control District website in our press room. So I thought I'd leave you with a few before and after photos of the work that has been completed in the Barker Reservoir Watershed. These pictures are from a tributary leading into Buffalo Bayou, just west of Cinco Lakes Drive. This set of images show the dramatic difference in channel capacity. Notice the large amount of sediment and its resulting vegetation that almost completely blocks the channel in the image on the left. On the right, with the silt and sediment cleared, you can see easily the increased capacity of the channel for stormwater conveyance. This next set of images was photographed on the opposite side of this channel at another portion of a tributary leading into Buffalo Bayou. This is east of South Peak Road. To help orient yourself, notice the yellow arrow pointing to the black fence at the end of the brick wall on the left. In the image on the left, silt and sediment have nearly blocked the channel, leaving much less room for stormwater conveyance. Compare that to the desilted channel, as shown on the image in the right, where you can clearly see how the volume for stormwater conveyance is increased with the banks of the channel restored to their original design capacity. This last set of images was taken just south of Highland Knolls Drive. The images also show a dramatic contrast in channel capacity. In the image on the left, you can see where the channel is completely silted over and covered with growth in several areas, reducing the amount of volume available to flow through the channel. In the image on the right, you can see how much the channel capacity has increased as a result of the desilting and sediment removal. This photo also shows the sodding of the channel bank in progress. The strip of green grass you see is the sod planted to revegetate the slopes and prevent erosion of the bank now that they've been regraded and restored to their original intent. In the days after this photos was taken, sodding of the banks was completed to ensure proper turf establishment on the entire slope. I will now turn the program back over to kick off the Q&A.
Thanks, Marcus. And before we move into that Q&A, I want to share a quick reminder that we'd love to hear from you on this and other projects moving forward across Harris County. To learn more about this project, ask questions, and to sign up for our mailing list, please visit hcfcd.org/F52. Now, as a reminder, there are 3 ways to submit a comment about this project during tonight's session. You can submit a comment on this site in the box near the presentation live stream. Submit a comment on the Flood Control District's website. And again, that URL is hcfcd.org/F52. Or you can submit a comment via phone tonight at 855-925-2801, utilizing meeting code 5235. If you're joining us via phone tonight, please press star to leave a message. Additionally, I want to reiterate that any questions not addressed during tonight's Q&A will receive a response from the Flood Control District following the close of the comment period. Information from this meeting and a recording of tonight's live stream will be available on the Flood Control District's website and YouTube channel. Joining Marcus for our Q&A session tonight are Brandy Johnson, Project Manager, and Jonathan St. Romain, Capital Improvements Project Department Manager. Now it's time to take some of your questions. So our first question tonight is going to go over to Brandy. So Brandy, a resident has asked us to confirm when the desilting effort upstream of Barker will be completed.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. The de-silt work for the Barker program was completed in August of this year. And the next phase will be the repair project. So it may look like the sites have not been completed, but the de-silt effort has been completed, and we'll come back in some of those areas to do some of the repair work.
Thanks, Brandy. Okay, Marcus, we're going to come to you for our next question that came in from a resident asking whether Harris County Flood Control has a reserve fund to prepare for the eventual next desilting work that will happen years down the road.
Yeah, so to give you an idea of how our operations and maintenance work, prior to the bond program, the flood control district operated using $60 million for capital improvement projects and $60 million for operations and maintenance. Now with the bond program, we have the $120 million that we use for our operations and maintenance, while the bond funds works towards this larger program and some of the other capital improvement projects. So to answer the question, yes, we do have funds that will be used to do future desilts. We also get funding from agencies like FEMA, which provided us with the $250 million to do additional desilt efforts. So, and also after every event, we receive, if it's declared a disaster, a lot of times we receive additional funding there. So we have several funding sources, and we're also working towards a plan which will give us a little bit of a look forward for when we need to go to different channels and actually do desilts and repairs to have something more consistent to kind of plan out our future maintenance. Because as we reach towards the end of the bond program in the next 6 to 8 years, then that means there's going to be more maintenance necessary. And so right now the district is trying to prepare for that additional operations and maintenance that we know we're going to encounter. But that's a good question.
Great. Thanks so much, Marcus. Brandy, I'm going to send our next one to you. Someone has asked when the Mason Creek hike and bike trail damage will be repaired since the desilt work was completed.
Thank you for that question. With regards to the cracks or any damages to sidewalks or trails that was caused during the desilt effort, the trail sponsor, which can be a local mud district or the precinct or other organizations, is responsible for the trail maintenance. You can, to find out more information about the trails and our values and kind of explain what the flood control focus and what our responsibilities are, please visit our website for more information.
Thanks, Brandy. All right, Marcus, I'm going to come back to you for our next one. And this is a great one. So a resident is wondering how the recent FEMA funding that you mentioned will be used for future projects.
Okay, yes, and that's a good question. And so I somewhat mentioned that in my previous answer. And so this $250 million that we're going to receive are for the Willow Creek, White Oak, Spring Creek, Little Cypress, Greens, Barker, and Addicts. And so the plan is to, what we plan to do is bid out or do what we call request for qualifications to obtain consulting services to help us manage and design those projects. And as part of those funds, we've been given a certain amount of time to finish the project. So I think we have 4 years to complete them, which is why we're bringing on the additional consultants to help us with those other watersheds that I mentioned that the funds will be used for.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Marcus. Jonathan, I'm going to come to you for our next question. We have someone wondering why channel repairs are needed. Won't the channels always work properly will the channels always work properly going forward?
Sure. And so channel repairs are needed in short because of just the general wear and tear that can happen on our infrastructure. And if you think about anything that you own for a number of years, it's going, just like your house, it's going to receive some wear and tear over those years, and you're going to need to repair that. And so will the channels function properly? maybe, probably, the water will flow downstream in the channels for a number of years, but they won't function optimally. And so that's what we're trying to do here with both the De-Silt effort as well as the channel repairs, and especially with the channel repairs, because when we talk about repairs, we're talking about fixing major damage and major problems to these channels, such as large erosion areas. If you look on your screen there, the top picture on the left side, there's a very large area of erosion. And we talk about repairs to damaged structures and those structures such as outfalls that bring stormwater into the channel. We want to have those repaired and functioning properly. Sometimes it's not just the channel itself that benefits from these repairs, it's the upstream storm sewer system that's going to benefit from the repair of an outfall structure or other structure that's in the channel. And so yeah, all of these things are reasons that we need to keep these in good working order.
Thanks, Jonathan. So Marcus, I'm going to come to you next. So Jonathan just touched on the channel repairs, but we've also had a few people ask about what desilting is exactly. Do you mind walking through that?
Sure. So desilting happens when the waters within the channel, they rise, and as the velocity within the channel, runs along the banks, it grabs pieces of soil and carries it downstream. And as the waters start to recede and the velocity of the water starts to slow down, then you start to get some of the, of course, the larger particles fall out first, and then the smaller suspended particles hang out a little bit longer and are deposited much further downstream. And that moving of the sediment from one location to the next is what causes that, what we call sedimentation or buildup along the banks. And it just affects the capacity of the channel, even in some of the cases where, like the image on it that we're looking at here, that portion that we see that we repaired that's failed, where we see in the top image, where you see the banks pretty much go to almost a vertical channel. Well, that sediment that came from that failure is somewhere else downstream that we probably removed sediment from to repair, or that came from upstream, and the piece that broke off of that went downstream. So it's just it compounds, as you continue to have multiple events, and it gets so thick that you have grass growing like what we're looking at here. So it's a pretty big deal to clean it out of there and get it out of the channel.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Marcus. Okay, Brandy, I'm going to come to you next. We had a question asked, what channels is the flood control district desilting and repairing?
The scope of work for the De-Silt included 22 miles of channels and tributaries along Mason Creek and Upper Buffalo Bayou, which Harris County Flood Control has property rights, with the majority of the channels being within Harris County. Approximately 17 miles of the 22 miles of channel were included in the desilting effort. And then the repair package will include repairs along majority of the channels that we previously desilted.
Perfect. Thanks, Brandy. And I'm actually going to stick with you for our next question, which is a great one from Susan, asking what the contractor does with the sediment. Is it sold? And wouldn't a fast flowing stream remove the sediment naturally?
Good question. The sediment removed from the channels has to go to an approved disposal site. Before the contractor can remove any material off-site, they have to submit where that material will be sent. And once it's submitted, the flood control district will review and approve those disposal sites. Each channel is designed to convey and flow a certain amount of water. as well as at a certain speed. So by desilting and removing that sediment, it's not going to necessarily speed up or increase the velocity in which the water will flow downstream. It will flow at the same design velocity that it was designed for.
Thanks, Brandy. And that's actually a great segue to our next question, which I'm going to give to Jonathan. We had someone ask if the desilting of the channel causes the water to flow faster and flood their home. So Jonathan, do you mind just touching on that and talking through that?
Sure. So de-silt projects don't increase flooding risks in any area, either upstream or downstream of the project site. These projects are designed to improve stormwater conveyance by restoring our channels to their original design capacity. And so by removing the silt and sediment, we're just bringing the channels back to the way that they were originally designed.
Perfect. Marcus, on that topic, we did have someone ask why we typically don't dig these channels deeper and wider to accommodate more water. Could you talk about that?
Sure. So the intent of this project is to de-silt, right? So it's to, as Jonathan just mentioned, this is to take a design channel that was designed to carry a certain flow, which is what Brandy said. And whenever you start to move outside of those parameters for the original design intent, then you start to do what we call increasing conveyance capacity. So if you will, there was an exhibit that we had, or a slide that we had, that showed the different jurisdictions. If we can go to that slide. Okay, thank you. So at the bottom of this image, we talked about you have a before of a small pipe and what is an after of a larger pipe. And what I was discussing this, I was saying, hey, as storm sewers are increased, then that increase flows downstream. And by increasing flows downstream, you're impacting others. And since our policy is not to impact others, we build the detention basins. Well, it's just the same concept applies when you make a channel larger. A larger channel increases the conveyance within the channel and transfers the flood risk downstream to another, someone else that's downstream. So the reason we aren't doing deeper and wider here is just because we know we can provide some benefit just by simply restoring the channel to its original design capacity, but it also prevents us from having to go and find somewhere to acquire detention to mitigate those impacts that we would cause by widening and deepening the channel.
Perfect. Thanks, Marcus. And I'm actually going to stick with you for our next one, because we had a very similar question come in about the reservoirs themselves. So they said, instead of all this work, why can't you excavate the reservoirs to hold more water?
Yes, and thanks for that question. And that's also one of the common questions that we get. So the reservoirs are actually owned and operated by the Corps. The flood control district, we don't have property rights to conduct any other work in the reservoirs. So, again, which is why on this program, we sort of focused on the desilting of the channels in the reservoir and working in right of way that the flood control district actually owns. So the flood control district doesn't maintain the reservoir. That's part of the Corps' effort. And so, questions about doing work inside the reservoir or operations and maintenance of the structures of the reservoir, anything like that, those questions we actually direct to the Corps.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Brandy, I'm going to come to you for our next question. We've had a couple about this topic. Folks are wondering how trees will be impacted by the project.
Essential part of to be able to do the repair project is what has to do with accessing the project site. So trees can either be trimmed or removed to allow the contractor to be able to bring in equipment and other machinery to do the repairs. So we will work closely with the contractors as much as possible in other to be able to minimize the amount of trees that can be or that will be impacted by our repair project. And in addition, we also try to, during our design phase, is get with the different entities that may have planted those trees and see if we could potentially relocate those trees so that they won't be damaged or anything, and place them in an area where they can not necessarily affect the access and be able to continue to flourish and keep a park-like setting within the area or other areas along our channels.
Perfect. Thanks, Brandy. And you actually answered 2 in 1 there. So we had another question come in about trees, and I think Brandy just addressed it beautifully. So Jonathan, I'm going to come to you for our next one. We've had a couple folks ask questions about how local trails and footpaths will be impacted.
Sure. So the trails and footpaths would mostly be impacted during the access portion of the construction. And so as the contractor needs to get equipment in and out of a project site, typically they'll have to cross over some of these trails and footpaths. And so that's where you would see some disruption from time to time on those. And so the plans for that are to communicate those closures as early as possible. And that would either be via signs on the site or on our website to let you know where these closures were going to happen. And then you would also see some construction fencing around that would make sure to separate those areas and to separate pedestrians away from the access routes of the heavy construction equipment. And those closures wouldn't last terribly long. Hopefully they would be temporary and would not cause too much of a disruption. But we do have to get our heavy equipment in and out of the project sites.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks so much, Jonathan. I'm going to pause here for just a moment and share a quick reminder of the different ways that folks can participate in tonight's meeting. So we've thrown a lot of information at you, and we want to make sure that we're gathering your input. So there are 3 ways to submit a comment during tonight's meeting. 1 in the box next to the presentation live stream. 2 on the Flood Control District's website. Again, that is hcfcd.org/F52, or you can participate via phone at 855-925-2801 with meeting code 5235. And again, if you're joining us via phone, just hit that star key to leave a message. Okay, back to the questions. And Brandy, we're going to come back to you for this one. Stan asked why desilting was not completed west of the Grand Parkway.
The channels that are west of the Grand Parkway are natural channels, meaning that they have not been altered in any way, and they're in their natural state. So our program focused on channels that have been developed and designed and constructed by flood control or another entity. Or another entity. So it was able for us to compare to a design of how much sediment had to be removed to get back down to the design of that channel.
Perfect. Thanks, Brandy. Okay, Marcus, I'm going to come to you for our next question, which is from Cliff. And he asked if you believe that the desilting and repair programs will keep future flood events based on historical data within the Barker Reservoir and keep floodwaters within those boundaries and out of the flood area.
And I guess I'm not totally sure about, I assume that the question is about the flood pool that's shown on the map. So if that's the question, then this project is again to restore the channel to the original design intent. And I know that, it's kind of one of the repetitive answers that we get, but that's all it's doing. It's not increasing anything so that it expands or decreases. What I can say is that most of the the benefit that will be seen will likely be in the areas where we actually restored the channel to its original design capacity. So, in terms of whether or not it's going to move the pool, this effort is not to change any maps or do any realigning of what the existing flood maps already show.
Thanks, Marcus. Okay, Jonathan, another good question. Folks are wondering where they can find construction advisories and updates on the project.
Sure. So you can always find that information on our website, and there we have it up on the screen for you, hcfcd.org/F52. That F52 is our number for this program within our 2018 bond program. And so, yeah, we have all kinds of information on there. Our communications team really does a great job of keeping these project page websites updated. And so you can always go there to learn more and get more detail. And also, if you're out in the area, the contractor will have appropriate construction signage that will be placed up on the sites throughout the project.
Perfect. Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, Marcus, back to you. John is asking if Barker Reservoir will be dredged so as to be able to contain more water. So that kind of goes back to one of our previous questions, but.
And so to simply answer the question is no, not as part of this project. So our work wasn't intended to go in and do anything inside the Barker Reservoir, which again is property that's owned by the Corps of Engineers. So any work that would take place inside the reservoir would be something that would likely be Corps-led with, flood control serving as, a local partner, if you will. But the question of dredging the reservoir itself would have to totally be a response that the Corps would have to give.
Thanks, Marcus. Okay, Brandy, a resident has asked, can you discuss a couple specific major channel repair projects south of I-10? Where are they and what is entailed in the repair?
Yes, I think we had a slide that showed a map of, yes, here. It's, as you can see in this exhibit is where the channel repairs will be included south of I-10 along some of the tributaries of Mason Creek. As you can see, the different locations, these repairs could include erosion within the slope, meaning that the slope has caved in some parts. The repairs could also include outfall repairs, so outfalls that are significantly damaged or that has fallen into the channel or that has been beat up due to the mowing that we do out there or the sediment that was on top of that. So the repairs will just include the slope repairs, outfalls, any type of bank or sinkholes that may be along the top of the channel, anything that we find that will will be beneficial to restore the channel back to its design capacity and allow the water to be able to flow better.
Thanks, Brady. Okay, Jonathan, here's a great question for you. Will the desilting and repair work reduce the amount of silt accumulation in the future? And if no, why not?
So it is a good question with, I think, sort of a complex answer. And the answer is yes and no. I think in the short term, the answer is, yeah, sure, it'll reduce the amount of silt accumulation just by pulling all of that loose sediment out. That takes away the amount of available silt and material to be moved downstream in the near term. Now, in the long term, probably not. We may have to come back and do this again a number of years. How long that will be from now, we can't say. Sediment is deposited in channels from a number of sources. The first source, like I said, would be sediment that already started in the channel, just somewhere upstream, and it's been moved and placed downstream. Sediment can come from just being suspended in the water, in the flow. Sediment can also come from a major storm event that produces some kind of erosion failure upstream, and then that material, that dirt, would slough off into the channel and then move and be deposited somewhere downstream. Sediment also comes just from out in the area, in the neighborhood where there is new development, new construction, any sort of disturbed area. If you see a construction site, whether it's a neighborhood or a shopping center or whatever it is, they'll usually have this what we call silt fence, this black silt fence surrounding the whole site, and that's what we call stormwater pollution prevention. And there's rules in place to keep silt and sediment on all of these construction sites, because if they aren't kept on those construction sites, they get washed down through the storm sewer and end up in our channels. And when they drop out and get deposited, that's when they start blocking our channels. And so it's a long answer to, like I said, a complicated question, because there are many sources of this sediment. And so we try to, with this De-Silt and repair, to prevent erosion failures in the future that would cause the deposition of the sediment. But then, like I said, at the same time, there are rules in place to try and keep sediment on construction sites and disturbed areas, so that doesn't wash downstream too. So yes and no is the answer to your question.
That's helpful. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, Marcus, so I'm going to ask you a question that we get a lot. A resident asked if they have some questions about the mowing of channels in their neighborhood. Who do they talk to about that?
So actually they can refer to our, go through our website and submit it to our community service division. They do get a lot of questions about, mowing and when we'll be out there, and they'll be happy to give you information specific to your area. But they're also on the website. There's a location where we have a map that lets you know when the last time an area was mowed and tells you the next time we'll be out there. We have a mowing cycle of 3 times per year, but that could also give you an idea of the expected time in which we'll be within a certain area to do mowing. But, community service division, they do a great job of making sure that they're being responsive, getting out to the residents and addressing some of these issues that the residents bring up. I mean, they do a really good job at that. So.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, Brandy, we had another really good question come through asking, are you removing the trash and larger debris people have thrown into the channels?
Yes, a part of the desilting effort did include the removal of large debris and trash from the channels as well. And so if more trash has been dumped when we come out to do repairs, the contractor will pick up that material as well.
Great, thanks so much. And I'm going to stick with you for our next question. We also had somebody ask that when and if these channels start to fill with silt again, who do folks notify?
Yes, the residents can go to our website and fill out a service request form. The easiest way, because it's a long website link for you to go to be able to fill it out. So the easiest way I suggest is to look in the search bar on the website and just type in service request, and it will direct you to the form for you to be able to fill out. There's also a number that you can call to speak to or leave a voice message with that can address that inquiry as well. And that number is 346-286-4197.
Great, thanks so much, Brandy. Okay, Marcus, I'm going to come to you for our next one. We received another good question asking how the flood control district works with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to ensure that the reservoirs are operating properly.
Yes, and so just again, the flood control district, we don't have a role in the operations or ownership of the federal reservoirs. And just the goal of this program is to address the channels for which we do have property rights and on areas that we actually operating on. And I know it's not a popular answer, but it's a lot of people seem to think that flood control has some control over the reservoirs and operations, and it's just it's information that we're trying to get out there to kind of help people understand the difference in roles and responsibilities, especially within the Barker Reservoir and at its Reservoir Watershed, that we just don't have the property rights to do anything there. And but we definitely work with our partners, and whenever an opportunity arises for us to do something together to help the citizens of Harris County, then we're going to move forward with it.
Great, thanks, Marcus. And I'll actually take this next question. A resident asked where they can go to ask questions after the meeting. So we've talked a lot about during the meeting tonight, but we really do want to hear from folks throughout the life cycle of this project and other efforts that we have going on across the county. So if you do have additional questions on this project or others, you can visit the website. So that's hcfcd.org/F52. So that'll allow you to submit a comment online, and then a flood control district representative from the communications team or the appropriate project team member will contact you regarding your specific concerns. All right, so Marcus, I'm going to send another question your way. Someone asked, after the completion of this program, will the reservoirs handle large rain events such as Hurricane Harvey?
And I'll start with the simple answer is probably not. That's probably going to be the best answer I get. It's probably not, just because the intent of this was to, again, restore the channel to their original capacity, which the reservoirs were already designed to handle what we understood to be the original capacity of those tributaries that go within the reservoir. But again, just like the previous question I just responded to, we just don't have the property rights to do anything within those reservoirs, and that those questions as it relates to operations or any type of work inside those reservoirs should be directed to the United States Army Corps of Engineers.
Perfect. Thanks, Marcus. That's a helpful clarification. Okay, Brady, I know you touched on this previously, but I'm hoping you can, we had another question come in just about which channels precisely are part of the De-Silt and Repair program. So do you mind just touching on that again briefly?
Sure. If you would like to get a more in-depth of the locations of what channels, please visit the website because there are maps for the De-Silt and the repair packages. So that you can get a more closer look at what channels were included. But the channels that were included were channels that that Harris County Flood Control District has property rights. And so this included channels along Mason Creek and Upper Buffalo Bayou and their tributaries. And so we evaluated approximately 22 miles of channel to see what work needed to be done. And of those 22, 17 miles of channels were included in the De-Silt packages, and then the repair packages will come back to a majority of those channels to do work as well.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Brandy. And I'm actually going to stick with you for our next question, which is from Sandra. She wanted to know when the Barker channels will be desilted again.
The time frame is to be determined. After major rain events, our maintenance group or infrastructure group will go out and evaluate the channels just to see what damages or if a large amounts of sediment has deposited within those channels. And at the conclusion of this program, as a part of our routine maintenance with going out after every storm event, we will establish kind of a general, I guess, rule of thumb of when channels need to go back and be reevaluated. And then once we have done those evaluations, we will see about how much can be put into a project, because even though sediment may have deposited in the channel, it may not be enough sediment to warrant a project at that time. And so, and what I mean by that is the cost for construction to go out there to do the work may not see the benefit of removing that sediment. So what we would do is to combine all of the work of the sediment that needs to be removed and package that together to be able to develop a sediment removal project within the future. So that time could be a year from now, it could be 5 years from now, just depending on what kind of work that the channels may need.
Great, thanks, Brandy. And I will actually field the last question tonight from Greg, who asked whether this meeting as well as the Q&A will be available via recording. And the answer to that is yes. So tonight's full meeting, including the presentation Marcus gave earlier, as well as this full Q&A with our lovely panel, will be available on the Flood Control District website, again, hcfcd.org/F52, and on our YouTube channel as well. And with that, I'd like to share one final reminder that we're continuing to accept comments and feedback on this project through October 15th, 2021. We also encourage everyone to get flood insurance, as flood season in Harris County runs year round. Thank you again for joining us this evening and for your engagement with this project. We look forward to continuing to share updates as our work moves forward. Stay safe and have a great evening.